Thank you all for joining us for the Future of Work, Data Analytics and Lifelong Learning Workshop. Joining us today are Dr. Nicole Hudson, Associate Director of Campus Relations for the Office of Online Education, and Eileen McGrary, Executive Director of Career Services. They are going to discuss the dynamics and trends of shaping the future of work so that you can be ahead of the curve. I'm going to hand it over to them now to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And I just appreciate the opportunity to co-facilitate this workshop with Eileen. I'm going to allow Eileen to introduce herself first, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about me. But both of us serve on the Grad Academy Advisory Board and have had a wonderful opportunity to serve the college in that manner, and really excited to give you this content. So Eileen, do you mind doing your introduction?
Sure. Thank you, Nicole. It's great to have an opportunity to serve on the board and to work with graduate students. And I think the topics that we address, it doesn't matter where you are in your career, at what point you are, we all need guidance along the way, and the world's changing, and that's what this is about. So I direct the main career services office on the UNLV campus, and we assist students with career planning and design, decision making, help them to make sure that their resumes or CVs are ready, whether they're applying for something that's career related while you're in school or while you're finishing your program, and want to explore what's out there for you. We host a number of career fairs, employer connection events, and all the key platforms that bring resources your way and connect you to employers that are out there looking for our UNLV students and graduate talent. Happy to be here.
Great. And as I said, my name is Nicole Hudson. My title is Associate Director of Campus Relations. And what I do in the Office of Online Ed is I manage a team of embedded technologists who support faculty with online learning. So you may be wondering why I'm here. My background is actually HR, and I've spent 25 years in higher ed, but a couple of times I've left higher ed and have gone into HR roles such as talent acquisition. I was a manager of talent acquisition and training. And so this topic is just near and dear to my heart. As I describe, I have a career lattice, which is definitely not a ladder. And this topic really resonates in that way. So I've served locally on our Workforce Development Board, and I've also served in our Society of Human Resource Management Board, and I've taught classes specifically in HR-related areas, such as succession planning for our UNLV at Outreach. And so that's what I bring to this conversation. Again, both Eileen and I serve on the advisory board, and really, as we've talked, Eileen and I have talked about work changing our personal careers and pivots and change of institutions. We just really think that this information is something we want to get in your hands and more importantly, encourage you to spread the word. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to provide some foundational context to what we're going to talk about. The foundation of this workshop stems from this book, The Adaptation Advantage. And it's written by Heather McGowan and Chris Shipley. This book came out in 2020, and the subheading is The Adaptation Advantage: Let Go, Learn Fast, and Thrive in the Future of Work. I was sharing, honestly, with a friend just over the weekend. I noticed this person on LinkedIn said she was looking to write a book. And I told her, I have a book coach. I personally was looking to write a book a couple years ago in 2020. And to be honest with you, I came across this book, which was kind of the concept of the book that I had. And I said, I couldn't have written it better. I mean, the thoughts, the concepts that McGowan and Shipley cover were so pertinent, and really the thoughts that I think I had, but they elevated to a whole nother level. So I am going to encourage you to get this book, but we are going to summarize some of the key concepts here. And I want to share some of the personal stories of why, I had this topic of interest and real life experiences for me that allowed this to happen. So this slide here shares what McGowan and Shipley shared within their book. The future of work, and actually our old economy, has required us to look at work differently. If you look at the old economy, the graph, it shows that we go through our K-12 education, we then go to a university, we start our career, our jobs, and maybe you have a couple of jobs, and then you move into your career, and then maybe you move up further into your career. At the time of our this old economy, the life expectancy was 67. You get a pension around 66, 67, or 62 at the time. And then you continue on just as a retiree. That was the old economy. The reason I wanted to write the book is that wasn't my reality. I was a non-traditional learner, although I started a university and a community college system personally. Actually, the title of my book was Learning, Earning, and Making a Life was going to be the title, my working title of my book. Because that, again, was my reality, which is more to the new reality, where you learn and maybe you engage in work. And then maybe you have to go back to the well to learn again and then re-engage in work. And they show that this continuum continues throughout what we now have as a longer life expectancy of 90 plus. Just yesterday, I read that Social Security is increasing their minimum age for full retirement benefits will now be 67. And so we are finding that it's just harder to retire. And more importantly, with the longer life expectancy, how are you spending your quality of life and how are you engaging within work in a more meaningful way? And so I'm going to talk about this throughout the thread of this presentation, at least my section, about this earning, and then you go back and you learn a little bit more, and then you go back to work, and then maybe you change careers along the way. And those are absolute stories that I had throughout my career. The authors also talk about the evolution of humans and where we are today. And so I want to focus on that timeline of the augmented era, where the authors describe our work world and our work requirements are less labor intensive. So we're not doing work as much with our hands. We're not hunting and gathering. We're not working in factories or as had happened within the industrial era. But today we're moving past the information era into, again, an augmented reality. And what that means is that employers and companies require us to be creative, they require us to be agile, and they require us to adapt. And this is considered this cognitive augmentation. So what this means is, again, we have to, as you know, the world of work is bigger, faster, things are moving at a pace where we, to be competitive, have to be creative. We also have to be able to be agile, to move, to change course. And then the adaptability portion is to be able to manage ourselves and our environments, and again, not only are you being flexible, but you are expected to be able to find comfort in that new status and then also achieve within that status. Now, I teach at several institutions, and one of the institutions that I teach with is outside of UNLV, but it's doctoral studies. And this program that I teach in is organizational leadership, and it's with higher ed professionals who are looking, again, to earn their doctorate. And some of the course content, as many of the courses titles are innovative leadership, innovative organizations. The curriculum has changed to match the needs of the workplace. And as I'm working with students to help them get to their points of dissertation or their point of research, we're talking and challenging about or asking questions about how we look at today's education problems and opportunities and how we can think differently to solve them. Because again, these are the new leaders of tomorrow. And as you think about the course of a dissertation program, maybe 3, 4 years, 5 years, a lot changes just in such a short amount of time. And so again, maybe ideas they had at the beginning of their studies is not the same ideas they had towards the middle or end. That's where the agility and ability to be able to adapt is required. And that's what this evolution shows. So the realities of today, I like this graph, or chart rather, but it also comes with a little bit of bad news. And I want to just share that with you for just transparency and honesty. The questions in black are the questions we've all been asked. What do you want to be when you grow up? You know, what is your major? What do you do? These are questions that define who we are. And the authors say that these are kind of outdated questions. They're outdated questions because it's 100% sure that our jobs are going to change within our lifetime. Automation and task automation continues to evolve, and by 2033, 47% of tasks within organizations are set to have some sort of evolution. 27% of students, graduates, work actually within their major. And this is probably the most disheartening stat. This stat has changed since I started my education over 25 years ago. But you're going to have 17 jobs and possibly 5 different industries. I know throughout my career, as I said, I've worked within higher education, but I've also worked in HR. And during times of economic need or life transition, I've gone back and worked retail. You know, so I know that our jobs change, our industry changes. And so the reality of today is that we need to learn skills to better adapt to these changes in a way that will help us stay productive and move forward, when oftentimes these outdated questions are at the core of who our identities are and what we believe and who we, claim to be. I think is a good way to put it. So I'm going to actually spend a little bit more time on this slide as I talk about the job changes and careers. And I worked for another university, so I've been with UNLV for just about 3 years, but I worked for another university. And in 2007, I was in North Carolina, and I had young children at the time. So I had a 4-year-old and I think a 2-year-old. And I decided, I had some finances in the bank. I said, I've been working throughout since I was 16 years old, very actively, either working and going to school. And so with money in the bank, I decided to take a small hiatus, as I thought, live off of savings a little bit. I was a single mother at the time, and so I made this choice to leave education and wanted to explore recareering. I was at this time in my late 20s, and I just felt like there was some more opportunities there, and I just wanted to have a chance to do some consulting work. I wanted to do a small business, and then again, go back into the workforce. Well, I decided to recareer after my research and interest that I'm really good and understand finances. So I had an MBA, and I didn't feel like I was able to explore that. And so I decided I wanted to be a financial advisor, and got hired with Smith Barney. At the time, they compensated me for 6 months while I was studying for my Series 7 exam, which is a difficult exam to be able to, buy and trade stocks. And so I did this at the beginning of 2008. If anyone knows what happened in 2008, we had a market crash. That was the wrong time to recareer for Nicole, a single mom with her kids and trying to make things happen. And so unfortunately, the market was horrible, as we all experienced, especially here in Nevada. And so there I was, returning back to education. So that's an example of me spending 6 months studying for an exam actively, because it's a very difficult exam, and I had one shot, or I was going to be without a job if I didn't pass it. So it was a high stakes exam for me and my family. During the week that I was in my training, so I'd already passed the exam, I was in training, I was in New York, that was when the market crashed. And so just feeling awful about time, but also feeling awful about my identity. I left a job. At the time, I was the vice president of my university for my region, and reinvented myself as this financial advisor. I remember my office was in a very nice part of town, and I was excited to get high-end clients and rebrand myself that way. And it just didn't work out. And so not only was it a blow to my livelihood, my income, but again, I want to say the identity was also pretty much it was jarred. It goes back to, what do you want to be when you grow up? What's your major and what do you do? Well, I had this MBA and I tried to redefine all these things for myself, and it just wasn't the case. And so, long story short, I think I returned back to education after then. That was one of the times I returned back to education, and started working at a different school in a slightly different role. But that was my opportunity. So I want to talk about this slide here. You couple our changes of economy with our societal and cultural changes, and the bottom line is that who we are, what we do, and the relationships and where we do it has absolutely changed. Again, I can say I am 40, I'll be 48. I've been working since I was 16. I was in California last month and had a wonderful opportunity to see my very first boss, who is still behind a desk working at a moving and storage company in California. And her name is Carol. I had to ask my Carol, how old are you now? She is 85. So mind you, 30 plus years that we worked together. And I asked her why she's still working. And her thought was, if I stop, what happens next? She owns a moving and storage company in a male-dominated industry. She has had this company for 40 years. But as she's seen all the changes of our society and work and climate, this is her safety zone in some cases. But more importantly, she's contributing to the community and contributing her income. So what happens if I leave? She had bought a retirement home, but says she just visits once every few months because she's just, that's what she knows is work, and that's what she knows is that contribution. And so again, as we have societal and workplace changes and just culture changes, this changes our work environment, in many ways, allowing us to be seen differently, allowing us to grow in different ways, and allowing us just to, dial in to, again, how we show up within the world of work. So how has work changed? I can say over the course of my 30 plus years of work, in addition to sharing this content with HR managers, working with talent acquisition professionals being one, that work is more complex than ever. Automation works well when things are repetitive and known. The concept of atomization is where you kind of focus on the small parts. That's when things are predictable or discrete. We, in the world of work today, have to combine our tasks are more complex, and they require the human element, but they're also, again, augmented, meaning we have to be agile, we have to be flexible, because there's a lot of ambiguity within our workplace problems today. I can say over the course of, like I said, my career and even my short time here at UNLV, the things that I mentioned, I help faculty teach online. And so started same thing in 2019. We did not expect to have a pandemic. And so at the time, we had some basic trainings and resources available for faculty. But I really, and my team, had to ramp up those resources in a very quick manner in order to meet the complex changing needs of our university. If I wasn't able to adapt, if my team wasn't able to adapt, I don't think we would have been able to go remote in 2 weeks. I think those skills that I've learned along the way of managing campuses and schools, but also just rolling with it, has been a skill set that's been invaluable for my career, but also has made a difference within our institutions. And so how work has changed, again, work is a lot more complex. There's a lot more challenges, and again, just our diversity initiatives and working with different people, understanding different viewpoints, and really centering that in the workplace to be able to maximize talent is what we've seen. And again, to be competitive, we need to develop the skills in order to contribute in the workplace such. So I'm going to turn it, actually, there's one more slide. Sorry. The concept that I'm sharing is about upskilling and reskilling along the way. So this particular slide talks about our current role, and sometimes you need to upskill, meaning you get additional knowledge or skills that are going to help you for your next role, or expand your skills that are going to help you support, again, the next role or your next function or opportunity. And so it's this constant work of either upskilling and reskilling. It is the concept of always being a lifelong learner and truly meaning it. And so there are things that you've learned within your undergrad, or maybe you're learning in your grad, that I find I have to continuously go back to the well to relearn, to refocus, to calibrate into my workplace. And I think that's a common thread. So again, as I mentioned, I've been a student of org leadership. I teach it as well. And so I am constantly going back to the theories, going back to the new literature, and practice and applying this. You learn a skill, you apply it in the workplace, you tell the results. I do that again. That's my style of teaching, but that's my style of work because the workplace has required that. And so one of the things I shared, so I shared with you my 2008 change of career. After that, I returned back to education. I moved to Virginia, and I decided I was going to, at the time I remarried, and decided to be a stay-at-home mom. And that was a very interesting year for Nicole, who has worked since she was 16 years old. It was the most uncomfortable thing I have ever attempted to do, but that was just my relationship and kind of what happened. Sadly, the relationship did not work out, and it required me to have another life change where I moved back to Vegas to be with my family just for additional support. That was a pivotal year for me personally because I just needed a job. I was here, I was in Vegas, and there were not jobs available at the time. I had worked here about 20 years prior, probably in the late 90s. And so I had some connections that still worked here. One of my old coworkers became my boss, and I worked for a school recruiting students again. And so again, after being a vice president, after going into finance, I was back into a role that I had done probably 10 years prior, and it was fine. That's where I needed to be. That was the job that was available, and it helped to provide for my family while I was making this personal life transition. But as you can imagine, I wanted to go back into kind of the levels of work that I had been in, but our community didn't have those jobs. I wasn't able to have that seat at the table. And so that was the time I decided to upskill in a very different way with my mom's support. So I moved back, and I moved back home with my mom and my 2 kids. My mom allowed me to just work on my doctorate. And so for 2 years, that's what I finished. I had started it previously, but I hadn't finished it. And so I just nosed down, used that time to reskill or upskill in that case, to have additional options and opportunities. Those opportunities, so this is 2016, 2013 is when I started my program. 2016 is when I graduated. And again, although I did not have a position that was where I wanted to be at that time, I knew it was going to open up doors for those positions. And so fast forward 2019, the position I have, I know I earned this position because the other finalist candidate had a master's degree and I had the doctorate. And so, it matters how we upskill and reskill. It matters to just keep, options in your quiver, as I say, your arrows in your quiver, because you never know when you need it. And in this case, I needed it. I needed it to make a difference. And so why I teach doctoral studies, it costs me money to go back to school. And so I have student loans to pay for, and that additional income allows me to do so. But again, if I did not have the doctorate, I also wouldn't be able to teach doctoral studies. I've taught over the years, but never was able to do that. So the upskill, reskill, and that setback absolutely set me up for success. And so I think that mentality and that approach to education has always been in the back of my mind, that I never know what I'm going to need, and I need a couple of options, because I never want to be in a situation where, again, I don't have the skills to be successful, or the right level to be successful. And so again, I've quit jobs, I've been downsized, I've been let go. And so having those different career options and opportunities just make it matter, and they matter in the future of work. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Eileen, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about skills, and then talk a little bit more about that identity that I shared with you about.
Thank you, Nicole. One of the things about this presentation is you're going to find it thought-provoking, and sometimes in a way that alarms you, and sometimes you need, I think, a lot of time to reflect on it and really integrate it. And so many of the things that Nicole says resonate with me, even though I have more years of experience, Nicole, than you in many of those other things. So some of the things that you talked about from the lens that I look at when I'm working with both employers and students looking out at their career prospects, majors, how we view majors, and how the world of work and human resource leaders don't necessarily just want the major. That whole identity piece, how we identify ourselves an affiliate with the major, but there's so much more to us than that. And most people, once they're into their career track, the major doesn't really matter. It just goes away in the past. The other thing that struck me is how the idea of having to reinvent ourselves continuously, the 67 to 90, so that people thinking after retirement are going to continue to need to find ways to engage, meaningful ways to engage. So there's a lot of things that are thought-provoking. And so let's move on to sort of the next slide, and thinking about what the jobs look like today and what we've seen. And Nicole took us through the various differences in decades and industries and what it looks like today. But if you think about, so in this slide, they talk about the concept of the bundled job and unbundled job of today. And if you think about it, the bundled job we just did, it was a very generalist. We did everything to make something work, from the most minute detailed tasks to the more complex. And often we didn't get to the more complex duties. So just thinking of somebody in my field, if we didn't have really smart tools to help us predict the market, we had to do a lot of reading and research. So there's a lot of detail in that. Whereas now we have tools that could put a lot of good data right in our hands. So when you think about that, when you had these operational discrete tasks, then also, because you might be the only one who can access the information, you might be the only one who has the expertise. And once technology comes along and people are able to get information better, easier, suddenly you're not the expert. So what do you have to offer? So we've had to kind of rethink what we do and how we do it. The other thing is, as we become more automated, as we think about the automation of things, I was thinking about this the other day. There's two things that I think happen. One, we either need to become better at using those tools. That's one of the upskills, because we're constantly being left behind if we don't know the latest. And I've seen some presentation technologies that already left me behind. Like, what do you do with this? I don't know what these tools are on the side of this, presentation. So those can leave us behind. And on the flip side, sometimes we need to rethink what it opens up doors to what we can actually do. So I was thinking the other day, because we got the little robot vacuum, the robotic vacuum. And I usually clean my house on the weekends, but I turned this thing on, and all of a sudden that was the reality that, oh, I saved myself all kinds of time. So what do I do now? And then there's the other side of it. If you think about the field of accounting, it's probably a good example with all advanced Excel and tools that help us add things quickly, calculate things, even put things into data. What do you do now? So those are examples of how the jobs have changed. So now you have to use higher level analytical skills, right? If you were in that finance job again, Nicole, after you pass the test and you have all these smart tools, what's your value? So you can automatically see how the value goes beyond expertise, and it's suddenly the portable skills, how you're adapting to context, how you even redefine the work as we know it. So in a career professional sense, I no longer rely on being an expert. My job now is to help move information out to people so that more people can take greater advantage of information that's available, so that more people can help do what we're doing, so that expertise is shared and becomes part of a whole ecosystem to help people advance. So go ahead and move on to the next slide. There is also a concept called the T professional, and not having the opportunity to read the book, Nicole, and what the sources were, but I do remember probably within the past decade, there's been lots of conversations in higher ed and in corporate about what does it now look like to be successful in the world of work? What does it look like in the work environments and how we work? So if we think about that, going back to maybe being the one discipline, and we got lots of expertise, and then we just kind of progressively got better and better at our expertise. The successful professional today has to be more, their success depends more on how they interface with multiple functions in their organization and multiple people. In other words, how you work across disciplines to be able to interact effectively with other people and teams. And even today, if you think about the artificial intelligence, it also has to do with, can you have more than one specialty? So I've been in the career services field, and there's multiple things that I learn. Nicole's bounced back and forth with human resources and some finance. But is it not possible for us to actually have more than one discipline? So the more we can move across the multidisciplinary and interface effectively with different team members and different functions, and then the more we might have in expertise, the stronger our workplaces become. So they talk about the human machine and disciplinary convergence. So if you dig into this, it gets a little more complex. But even in a simple, one of the powerful things that people bring to the table is if you can reflect on all of the experiences you have, if you can reflect in a way that all the experiences come together in a much more powerful way, then that's what becomes the leader of tomorrow. So we talk about students sometimes, and they want all these different, we tell them to get these experiences, and they go out and they get different experiences. They studied abroad, they did an internship, they did a project, or you wrote your paper or did your thesis. What the power comes in how those things become integrated to make who you are. So that's the overall concept, I think, of the T professional and how you interact with others. What else? So jobs and purpose. So then as you think about it, certainly we all have experienced crises, from COVID. I mean, that's one that'll make you think about what you're doing and change quickly. But this next section has to do with how is it then, as we talked about being agile, being able to work across functions, how is it that people are gonna get the mindset to succeed in this rapidly changing environment? So what this book poses is that you start with purpose first. So it's the why. So it's the what interests you and what drives you just on the most basic human level. So it's not about what's out there, but what drives you. And it's not just tangential interest. So to give you an example, what drives me is helping others maximize their potential at the very core of what drives me. And that's when the smile comes on my face, when I help someone do something that they want to do, realize who they are, become really their true self, and achieve what they want to achieve. So then the next step is then, what's your superpower? So how do you actualize that through what I would call strengths, the personality traits, your interests, your preferences that you tend to want to develop. So for me, that's very much a human element. It's communication, it's empathy, it's listening, it's connecting people. And then your job then becomes, how do you apply that purpose? So how do you take what it is you are passionate about, what it is, and I'm going to actually, passion, they say, is not the word we want to use as much. It really is purpose. It really is, applying meaning, not just what excites you. So how do you apply that to the job in the climate you're in today? So what they're saying is, if though you start always with purpose, if you're grounded there, you can shift when that market shifts. So that's the concept that is trying to then align your jobs to what's out there in the market. We have a lot of charts, Nicole. So many charts.
We do, and I just wanted to make sure, I know we have a lot and we have about 15 more minutes, so feel free to adjust.
Yes, okay. So just a couple more thoughts, and then we can kind of talk about if there's questions or if there's things in the chat. I'm not seeing anything. But so basically, and I think Nicole talked about this when she talked about upskilling, learning and adaptation, if we haven't driven this concept home already, is really the key. And this iceberg model describes the layers required for learning and adaptation. And as we talked about earlier, the purpose and your identity is, if you're grounded in that, that's part of what helps you make you resilient and adaptive, because you're always going to be trying to find things that fit that purpose and the who you are, your identity. So I will tell you, I also, I had a beginning career. The beginning of my career was in a community college setting. I loved higher ed and wanted to, and I did some grant work. And at that time, sometimes you're at a point where you want to move out, you want to move up and out. And I had the first opportunity here at UNLV, and it was a life-changing experience. I got to grow a whole career center. But there came a time, one of the things I've learned is, don't ever really be afraid of change. I thought I would be at UNLV for my lifetime in the position, the role I started out, and I ended up going to a larger Research One university and spending years there. And what I would also tell you, like Nicole, sometimes it's not you that changes, but your environment changes. And sometimes you find yourself in situations you don't want to be in, and at the end, I wasn't in a good environment and needed to make a move. So moved to another university, and then suddenly an opportunity came my way. And that's how I ended up back here. They wanted me to rebuild. And it's been one of the most exciting, career moves. for me to reconnect with everyone and do this. So, and I would say, as we talk about that agile mindset, I mean, I took some risks to get out and do something different, and I don't regret it. So it so whatever you learned, if you can use it, that makes you agile and help you progress. So this last slide is just to describe what that agile mindset looks like, and starting with agency, which is your motivation. Although I don't know if I'm going in the right, yeah, it starts with identity, then your mindset, then enablers, but basically your agency. And so that's your motivation fueled by your purpose. Always having this entrepreneurial outlook. One of the things about work today, work anytime, is we often only focus on what we know. And there's so much out there that we don't know. That's part of what fuels my interest in career, is I'm always learning new things as I interface outside. So it's having that constant outlook. What's out there? What's going on? That curiosity. And then adapting, it's our problem solving skills and being willing to take on challenges. And then it's learning and unlearning, the learning agility. That's a hard one. I think unlearning sometimes is harder than learning. Unlearning our patterns and being open to new learning. So agile mindset. And then the next, and then it kind of goes back to identity. Did I miss one?
You did not. You did not. I'm gonna skip ahead, if you don't mind, to age and wisdom, if that's okay.
Yeah. So, and then I think this is one of the final ones, and it's just saying that with age, basically with age, we often gain more wisdom. And then the future of work skills tend to peak as we age. So some of the more complex skills, we develop them. But the baseline is our critical thinking, problem solving, creativity are key.
Yeah, I would like to spend some time on this slide. And Eileen, please chime in. This particular slide I like because it talks about the future of work skills to the right of the slide, which are different words than I think when I entered the workforce 30 years ago, but even 10 years ago as a manager. The skills that we looked for in hiring were problem solvers, critical thinking, creativity. Now, if you look at the list of the top 3, it's things like design mindset, social intelligence, sense making, very different thoughts and word choices. And this is from, again, the Institute for the Future. The previous list was from the World Economic Forum. Not saying that the previous list is not still relevant. It's just our workload and our work demands are that much different. I mean, look at number 5, cognitive load management. We get so much information. Working in higher ed, there is 20 articles before I wake up that I might, get messaged on or what have you, because they're so timely and we need to figure out how to react. But as a manager, I also need to kind of sort through the noise and be able to find out what's pertinent or relevant for my organization. New media literacy, that wasn't on the list before. Cross-cultural competence. So our skills are just that much more intense to some extent. But Eileen, what are your thoughts about this list?
So definitely it flows with the changes in our environments. And so some of the things I think are much more entrepreneurial, and it's also about pivoting and pace and information overload. And so to be effective, it's, you heard the idea of fail fast. That's a lot of what's behind design thinking or a design mindset. It's constantly reiterating, pivoting. And this is all, a lot of it has to do with how to pivot quickly, adapt, and social intelligence. That's how do we adapt well with people? But it's very much reflecting our world, what we're seeing today.
Absolutely. I remember teamwork used to be the big one, and now it's virtual collaboration, which is different. You're looking at teams, but you're incorporating technology as well and productivity. So again, this is real, and I think we're experiencing within our work environments. For sake of time, Eileen, I'm going to skip ahead if that's okay. I want to make sure we have a chance. Were there any other slides that you want to make sure we covered that you had? Something I did not cover?
No, I think we're good. I think there was something on learning tours, but I think again, that's how do we navigate our way through, so it very much relates to your previous slide. How do we navigate our way to that upskilling where we're increasing our capacity? And so the one comment I had, and you might have a closing for this, is sometimes we think it has to be formal education. I have to go and I get this degree. And we're constantly learning though. So if we think about our professional organizations, conferences, online learning, the multiple platforms where we can advance our skills, that's what this makes me think about, because we think it has to often be really formal, and it's not always that formal.
That's great. I mean, we have the career competencies and life design courses that are now available. Those are in part product from LinkedIn Learning. And so that might be, again, one of the ways that you gain additional skills along with your academic curriculum, along with volunteerism. I know I've been telling you my stories, but when I was out of work and transitioning, the best thing that I can do to get out of my own personal head was that because I was having a moment of crisis around my identity. So again, that was really something that stood out is I didn't expect the blow of the job transition to impact me as it did, but my work is important and my identity in work was important. But I decided to volunteer, and I volunteered to help others, displaced homemakers and workers, learn skills to get back to work. I did that at Help Us Southern Nevada, which is just down the street from UNLV's campus. That experience has led me now, I serve on that workforce board, helping to organize that program to fund other individuals who are going through crisis and challenges in their life. And so again, you're to your point, Eileen, you want to be open to figure out where you can get those skills. And in that case, that helped me to sharpen a skill that then allowed me to serve in a different way, because I now knew that organization and could serve a little bit better. So learning tours are all around us. All right, I want to allow a little bit of time for some Q&A. So let me just share some final thoughts on our behalf and then open it up. We'll have at least about 5 minutes if there's any questions anyone wants to unmute. But one of the main things about the future of work is to think about the value you create. And I think if anything, that is what I've learned, or that's what the literature and the research shows as well. We have there's a thought about your CV, your credentials, your past experience, but that's what you bring to the organization. That's your title. As Eileen spoke about, is really having that purpose and finding that tie to your purpose. So when life gets you down or transitions happen, you go back to that specific skill set. One of the skill sets that I realize I have is teaching. And that is the thread of my work. So is it, if I'm hiring a new person, I make sure they're onboarded. In my current role, I do, teach faculty how to teach, if you will. And so really figuring out how to create that value, and that's what I sell to employers. You're going to see job descriptions throughout your career, but really you want to make a mutual decision of where to work and what kind of work you want to do. And that's what this future of work really focuses on, the value that we create, what we bring to the employer, and a continuous learning mindset as well as a beginner's mind. I don't know all the answers, but I'm willing to research, and the better we get at finding the resources and adapting, the better we're able to contribute. So again, I want you to not leave discouraged. When we were developing this presentation, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, about all these new grads, and we don't want to tell them or have them feel like their degree does not matter. It does, but just know it's a journey. And I think that's what we want to make sure we leave you with today is that you have many years of working ahead of you. Make it count and make it make sense for you and something that you can do for the long haul. I mean, you've already invested your time in higher education, which a lot of people have not. So you're ahead of the game there, but you do have an opportunity to continue to learn, grow, and really shape what that looks like. You're going to have to deal with some uncertainty, but it also provides a lot of opportunities for creativity. So that is it. Again, we have a few minutes for just any Q&A. I believe I saw something in the chat, so if you can allow me to unshare or stop sharing, I'll be able to see the chat if there are any comments or questions.
More people here. I couldn't see everyone.
It was a great group that came in. So thank you for joining. Yes, it's great to see.
And I'll reiterate what Nicole said. One of the things that I noticed the number one skill that employers ask for is communications. And the one thing that advanced degrees do is you stand out strong. When we talk about all of this, what's the differentiator? Education. So it definitely makes a difference. And if you think about the complexity of the future skills, being a grad student and finishing your degree, that's a differentiator. So somebody asked here, can career services assist with planning, starting an LLC or nonprofit organization? So we can support more like resume development, cover letter, how you present yourself, how you brand yourself, the actual intricacies of starting a nonprofit organization. And Nicole, you may have other ideas. I'm thinking of our small business center does that kind of work.
That's where I was headed. Yes, the Small Business Center is the best resource for that. And I'll locate that and put it in the chat.
Yeah.
I believe UNLV Continuing Education also has nonprofit management certification. I can drop the link.
Okay. Yes.
As well.
Yes. And I think the Small Business Center does consulting so that you can meet with somebody one-on-one, but also the educational outreach. Yeah, continuing ed. There, you guys are quick.
And yeah, thank you. Again, this was honestly so great.